Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Private Eyes. I'm Bari.
And I'm Jen.
And we are private investigators. We have a lot of crazy stories to share. So we thought, what better way to kind of expose everything that we do, come out from going undercover and show people life through our lens than to do a podcast where we tell stories and discuss topics about everything we investigate. And we investigate cases from infamous infidelity, which everybody wants to hear and talk about, to insurance fraud, to high-level background studies. We do it all. So this first season, we're really going to be addressing all of the topics and questions that we get bombarded with when people find out that we're private investigators. Because naturally, they're shocked. They're like, oh my God, you're a private investigator? You're a woman.
Way.
You look like this. You look like that. You don't look like a private investigator. And the first thing they ask is, what's the craziest thing you've seen? Do you wear disguises? How do you go to the bathroom when you're on a job? We're going to talk about everything. And there's a lot to unpack there. First thing I want to say is when we're talking about these stories, these are real life stories. However, names have been changed to protect the guilty and the innocent.
Yes.
And we want you to know that if you're listening to something that might sound like your situation, might sound like your case, you are not unique. And the beauty of this is to let everybody know that they're not alone. People have been lied to. They've been betrayed. They want to know what's going on in somebody's life. They have questions. We're here to give you answers. So while you may think this sounds like you, it probably isn't. And know that you're not alone.
Exactly. But before we get into all of that, let's tell you a little bit about us and how we got started.
Okay, so I've been a private investigator for 20 years now. And I got into it kind of by happenstance. It was purely accidental, but really probably was my life's mission. So I started off really in corporate America, and I thought all my life, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm so lucky. I'm going to nap all day. I'm just going to, hang out and play and whatever. And I got there. And it wasn't exactly like that. I was like, this is for the birds. I'm not feeling it. I don't like it. I'm alone. I have nobody to talk to. I need some adult engagement. And, I went back to work for a little bit, working for the company I was working for. And I was very lucky. They let me do some consulting while my son was, little and at home. Right. And then the unit disbanded. And I was like, what am I going to do? And it wasn't until one day I was driving around town, and I have this really strange knack for memorizing license plates and memorizing cars and shapes of headlights and weird things like that. And I'm also kind of nosy and just constantly looking around like a hawk, just observing and looking. And I saw a girl. I was driving my son around, and I saw a girlfriend of mine driving around town, and she had a very common car. But of course I knew her license plate. So I called her up. I said, Stephanie, what are you doing driving around? Why aren't you at work? And she goes, why don't you just be a private investigator already? And I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. I had no idea what it meant to be a private investigator. I mean, I had an idea. I watched Magnum PI, but that certainly couldn't be what it's all about. So I was like, I really had no idea. I had no expectation. So I started making phone calls. I called all these agencies, and I was either hung up on, or people would say, you're a girl. You don't have any law enforcement experience. No, click. And some were just downright creepy. They just answer the phone and go, hello? And I'd be like, hello? Is this the private investigator? Maybe. Click. I was like, not that guy.
What do you want?
Exactly. So I actually found a guy a couple towns over, and he was like, why don't you, come in? I'll meet you. He's like, can you type? I was like, oh, man. Look, I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I didn't care. He's like, I have a dyslexic secretary. I was like, this sounds fantastic. I'll be right in.
You're hired.
I'll be right in. And I walked in. I met him. And he's like, I've never hired anyone that I don't know, because we're like a paranoid breed, private investigators. I don't know what it is. Super paranoid. He's like, I've only hired people that I know. And he's like, but you're so enthusiastic. And, he's like, do you want to try surveillance this weekend? I'll put you out with one of the guys. And I was like, absolutely. I desperately wanted to try it. And I went out, and I was just like blown away by it. It was like everything that appealed to all of my senses. I was sitting in a car, I was spying, I had to make notes and memorize things. And it was just the best feeling ever. And I never looked back. I was like, this is great. And that job wasn't even anything like momentous.
Fantastic. Right.
No, it was nothing. It wasn't even remarkable. It was like, I think like nothing happened. I didn't care. Like the time flew. I'm like, I'm spying and I'm, this is terrific.
This is it. This is it.
I just loved it. And that was it. So I ended up, working for him for a couple of years until I was able to get my own license. And then I started my own firm, my own practice, and here we are today. And that's kind of how I met you. And I brought you on board. And you were not a private investigator in the beginning.
No, I wasn't. Actually, how lucky I am to know you. I was in sales for a long time, and I just needed a change. I liked the people I worked with, but I was over sales. And I was tired of those unrealistic goals and trying to hit numbers and blah, 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 blah. And I just wanted to be in a place where I could be myself. So I was looking for some jobs and filling out applications online, and nothing was really landing. And so I utilized social media, good old Facebook, and I just threw it out there. I said, oh, God, I'm going to be such a dork to write this. But I'm like, does anybody have a job? I'm willing to do anything.
And then I saw it. I saw the post.
She saw anything.
We have a history. You should tell them.
We do. So we have a little history. Barry and I went to high school together. My friend Colleen, who actually was her friend, also used to sneak me out during lunchtime.
We were older. We were the cool seniors.
Yeah, they were so cool. So they were seniors and I was a sophomore, and they would sneak me out in her little VW Bug and put blankets over me, and we would go out for a pizza.
See, we put you undercover.
Yeah, I was undercover from day one. So, it just was like a cool feeling to be able to reach out to Barry when she reached out to me saying, hey, you said you would do anything. I have a job. What? This might seem strange. You sent me an email. Do you remember what that email said?
I sent you, I DM'd you through Facebook, and I'm like,
you slid into my DMs.
I said, this is going to sound weird. I'm like, but I see you're looking for a job. Have you ever thought of being a private investigator? Right. I think you'd be really good at it. Yeah. And you wrote back,
I don't even know what it is.
Right. I mean, nobody does. That's why we're here.
I thought a private investigator was like the Sherlock Holmes. Okay, I got to get a hat and a cigar, and I'm going to go meet her in this like wood paneling room. But it wasn't like that. So I went down and met Barry in her office, which was gorgeous. And I walk in and I sit down and she tells me a little bit about the job, and I'm like, I'll give it a shot. She's like, you think you could do it? I go, I don't know.
Nah, I knew you'd be great at it, because Jen is a chameleon, and that's so critical with the work that we do. Right. And she could be anything. You could dress her up, you could dress her down, you can make her homeless, you can make her gorgeous, you could, whatever the case may be. So I just had a sense, my spidey senses told me that she's going to be good. And you have been with me ever since. It's been a long time now.
It's been a long time. And I don't plan on leaving. I love this job. And
the job loves you. So we don't plan on sending you anywhere.
Thank you.
All right. Enough of the mushy stuff.
Right.
So now let's get on to why we're really here.
Yes.
So what is it exactly that we do? So big question. What do private investigators do? And we investigate, as I said, all kinds of cases. But really, what we try to get at is the truth. We want to expose what people are doing, and our clients expect us to expose people's behaviors when they think they're not being watched. And whether that might be a cheating partner, it might be someone who's pretending that they're injured, whatever the case may be. Right. Our job is to blend in wherever we are, wherever we're doing our investigation, and, observe people in their natural habitat. Right. So typically people come to us and want us to investigate certain things about their life, aspects of their life, with a partner or with a business associate or whatever it may be. And they want us to investigate to find out the truth. So how exactly do we do something like that? Well, we wear disguises. We follow people in cars. We follow people on foot. We work the internet inside out to get information. But one thing that I kind of wanted to to talk about in this podcast is that to this day, I've been doing this 20 years, people are still surprised by the fact that I'm a woman. And that was actually one thing that stuck with me when I was making those calls and getting hung up on, and people were like, "You're a woman, click, click, click." In 20 years, hardly anything has changed. There are still so few women in this business. So I'm hoping through this podcast, it'll shed some light on what it's like to be an investigator, that as a woman, you can do it. You don't have to have any prior experience. It's something that's inside you. A really good investigator is somebody who wants to get the answer.
I know women, and they know how to get those
That's
answers.
right. So women, there's nobody better than a woman private investigator. I mean, there's some men that are great. Nobody get insulted, please.
Right, please.
But women overall, I think, make great investigators because people still don't suspect that a woman's following them. They conjure up an image in their mind about what they think a private investigator is. And it's a guy in a trench coat, smoking a cigar, drinking a scotch, wearing a trench coat, like hiding in a bush somewhere. Yeah. Although we do sometimes hide in bushes. We're not necessarily wearing trench coats unless they're in fashion. And sometimes I might and sometimes I won't. But in fact, I hate wearing a trench coat because I feel like it's so cliche. But yet they're so in. So I really want to wear them. But, people still have that misconception. And that's what makes being a woman a great private investigator. And introducing this field to the public. People still don't know what we do. 20 years I've been hearing, "Oh my God, you're a private investigator." Like, well, what is that? So I'm hoping that we can introduce what it's like to be a private investigator, what it is private investigators do, to the world and shed some light on this industry.
So Bari, out of all these years, what is one of your most memorable cases?
Thank make me sound a little older, all these years. But you're right. I've been doing this a long time. 20 years. I must have some good stories.
Something.
I have a lot of stories. And I've pretty much seen it all. So nothing really surprises me anymore. But the most memorable case, and it sticks with me to this day, was a situation where someone was leading a double life. Happens all the time, but this one was particularly impactful for me because it was the first time I had witnessed that. The first case that I had investigated that had to do with somebody living a double life. So the client, and we'll call her Pat, all right? Pat and Richard. So Pat wanted to get a divorce, and Pat was referred to me through an attorney, and her issue was that she wasn't happy in the marriage. I mean, they weren't getting along. They hadn't been intimate, just, been married a long time. 2 daughters. One had just graduating from high school. The other was in like her first or second year of college. And she came to me and she's like, I want a divorce from Richard, but I'm scared. I'm really scared. I said, "Well, what are you scared of?" She's like, "Well, I don't want to leave my house. I really love my house." I mean, she was your stereotypical kept woman, stay-at-home mom. She had thoughts that in the future, she'd be cooking in that same kitchen with her daughters. And they had a beautiful house and they were flush with money for many years. And then all of a sudden, why was Pat so unhappy? Well, Richard's telling her, "I don't have money for this. I don't have money for that." So then they're not getting along. Now there's no money. He's telling her they have to sell the house. And she's just like, something isn't right. On top of that, he had been abusive. There was a little bit of physical abuse going on, a little pushing, a little shoving, which is always a no-no. We don't put hands on people. And then there was also some emotional abuse, but not even toward her, to even her daughters. He was just like a miserable guy. I mean, he just sounded awful. Like he would say that the girls weren't as attractive as he hoped they would be. They were chubby. They needed to be in better shape. I mean, he was just sounded like an awful guy. And she was nervous. I mean, we're talking about a big life change, getting a divorce and moving on. But her daughters were really the impetus for her moving forward and talking to an attorney. They're like, "That's horrible. You got to get out of this marriage. We have to do something. He's just a bad guy." But Pat didn't want to go to work, didn't want to do all these things. Big life change. So, she didn't know anything about their money situation. She's telling me that all of a sudden Richard's saying to her, "We don't have money anymore." He had always made a lot of money. He worked for a big telecom company. And then all of a sudden, in the last couple of years, he had started his own business with a friend. He had been doing a lot of travel to Mexico, South American countries. He had been out of the home a lot. In fact, at this stage of the relationship, he was only sleeping at home like 3 nights a week. The other nights of the week, he'd say he was sleeping in his office, or he was traveling, or he just wasn't coming home. He was working so much. So she had already started to say, just this life is not for me anymore. It's terrible. So she speaks to an attorney. She ends up coming to me. I say to her, Pat, you got to get your finances together because that's going to be part of this. So not only did we want to investigate, the strategy was we were going to investigate what the heck was he doing with his time, because she suspected he was not at work. She didn't know what was going on with him, why the cruelty all of a sudden. And but the second prong of the investigation was the finances. Like, why is he saying they don't have any money anymore? Why is the bank account running out? In fact, it was so bad that he tells his daughter, the one who was graduating, I don't have money for a new prom dress. You're not getting a prom dress this year. And I think that's kind of what threw Pat over the edge. Wow. So meanwhile, Pat's got to get a job. She's getting back into the workforce. She has no idea about the finances. I said to her, here's what you got to do. Go through his files, go through the boxes when he's not at home, get a grip, get a handle on what's going on with your accounts. Just collect and start making copies of everything that you can. That's your job. That's your one job right now. I'll take care of the rest. So she did do that. A couple of days later, she calls me and says, I went through the stuff. I'm finding different things about accounts. I'm saving it all like you told me to. She's like, but my daughter who was helping me found this picture. And she's like, I don't know why. I don't even know if it's important to you. I don't know if it's relevant or not. I'm not sure what I should do with it. But she found this picture and just struck her as odd of this young girl, like a baby, who was Hispanic, an Hispanic female child. Now, Pat and Richard were not Hispanic. They were Caucasian. And she's like, I don't know. It's probably somebody he works with. His partner is Spanish. And I don't know if it's like a relative or something like that. And it was mixed up in his stuff. So I said, okay. It struck me as a little strange too. Like, what man is keeping a picture of a young girl, but a child? So I didn't know what exactly could be going on there. So first stage of the investigation is we do our preliminary research, which we look at all of our databases. We're Googling, we're just finding everything we can, and we're pulling all of our database reports, and I'm looking for red flags, anything that's off, anything that's strange. And I find that Richard had recently bought a house not more than a year ago. And I called Pat. I said, Pat, do you know about this property? You have a rental property? Nope. I thought, okay, well, maybe this was something in her finances she didn't know about, that only Richard took care of for income. She's like, no, we don't have any other property. I'm like, well, Richard just bought this property and there's another name on the deed and on the mortgage. And it was a woman named Mary. I said, do you know anybody named Mary? Is this a relative or something? She's like, no, but I think it's someone that works for him. I think it's someone who works in his office. I said, okay. So I see where this is going now. So next stage is we start the surveillance. So I'm already thinking like, this Richard is a bad guy. Like, I don't like him. I'm nervous. He sounds slimy. He sounds shifty and shady and anything you can think of. I'm like, the surveillance is going to suck. I'm thinking like they live on a court. I'm totally going to get made. I don't know how I'm going to follow him. So I go out there, take a deep breath, I get ready, I get in position, and we decide to do surveillance on one of the nights where he doesn't sleep at home, because obviously that makes sense. So we want to try to pick days that we know we're going to have some action. So I get there. She's like, he's going to leave the house between 3 and 4 o'clock like he always does. So I go. Sure enough, Richard comes out 3, 4 o'clock, and he takes off. I follow him. And I'm still following him. And I'm actually like, okay, everything's going smooth. Everything's all right so far. And where do we end up? But the house that he just bought, which was literally about 25 minutes from their marital residence.
That's a little close, isn't it?
Right. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe Richard, this is part of his escape plan too. Maybe he's thinking the same thing Pat's thinking. We're headed for divorce. This isn't working anymore. I'm moving on with my life. I'm going to buy myself this little house. So get to the house and he goes inside. I set up for surveillance to kind of see what happens. I get my position on the street, and within about an hour or so, he comes out with the little girl that Pat gave me a picture of. They walk across the street to a park. And I'm like in my car. I'm like, I got to get in a position to see what's going on here. I get out of my car. I put on a jacket. I put on a hoodie. I pretend like I'm going to the park, taking a walk, doing some exercise, sitting in the bleachers for a while, whatever. And sure enough, he's playing in the dirt with this little girl. She couldn't have been more than 3-4 years old. He looks like her grandpa, to be honest. And so they're playing, and he takes a phone call, and I overhear him say, "I'm with my daughter." And I was like, shit, this is getting good. So he is with his daughter. The little girl is his daughter. And the woman who we bought the house with does work for him. And I started doing some research on her. Turns out she has a teenage daughter, this aspiring model. And he's taking this other family of his everywhere. Fancy dinners, fancy clothes, everything. And this other daughter of the woman is not even his own daughter. So it just made me so sad. Like, meanwhile, he's calling his biological daughters like unattractive. And now he's like starting this new family with, she has a daughter that's beautiful, and all this comparisons going through my mind. And I'm really thinking, like, I hate this guy so much. He's just a disgusting being. So I go back, I tell Pat what's going on. She's, I guess, in a state of shock, essentially. And what happened was, the case continued. The attorneys are like dying over this, like what a bad guy he is. And they're getting ready to file. And then all of a sudden, Pat's like, he sent me flowers. I don't know if I want to do this. I'm like, everything that we found, everything that we told you, you're not going to go forward with this. She's like, I don't know. And they're like, I started work and everything's like really hard for me. And I don't know what's going on. I said, me and the attorneys were like, there is no way we are not moving forward with this. All the work, everything we did, everything we found out. And we're like, Pat, you got to do this. He's a bad guy. Don't let a couple flowers sway you here. So it turns out she continues down the path. And while I'm putting my report together for court for them to file, I'm finishing up my research. And then I find, and I think this is what threw Pat over the edge, a Vine that the woman's daughter had posted that showed them actually getting on a plane. She's taking selfies with her baby sister, who's Richard's daughter, and taking selfies on a plane. And then she pans over, and who do I see? I see the woman, Mary, and then I see, conveniently, Richard with his hand up in his unmistakable pink shirt and gray hair. He's in the video. I show this video to Pat, and I'm like, this is why you have to do this. Because he's not working for you. He's not working for your family. He's working for this family. And not only was he treating them to all these trips and spending money, in that way, he had this woman on his payroll. So how convenient for him to shift money out of his pocket, his wife's pocket, his daughter's pockets to this woman in a way that would never have been detected otherwise. Right. So, the case was absolutely amazing. It was bonkers to me and so crazy. In fact, I was thinking about it, and I actually looked them up on Facebook, and Pat is doing really well.
I was wondering.
Doing great with work. She's a grandmother now. No pictures of Richard, so she stayed the course, kept it clean, and never went back. But what was also crazy about this case was that the two women, when they found out about each other, had no idea. In fact, the woman that he was having this affair with and the second family with thought he was divorced. So she hated Richard. Pat hated Richard. Basically, Richard was out of everybody's life at this point. And I don't know where Richard is today, but everybody else seems to be happy, which makes me happy because this was a woman who really thought she knew what her life was, had no idea what had been going on behind her back for all these years, because this was in the making for quite some time. And she had no idea, but got herself up, stay-at-home mom, got herself up, went to work, got her stuff together, sold her house, got herself a place living on her own terms, and, was doing terrific. So, that's sometimes the way it goes.
Yeah,
the truth matters.
Sad.
Truth matters.
It's so scandalous. And
I know. Scary what people are capable of. And this wasn't like, all right, I've had people call and say, I think, my spouse has a family in the Philippines. He travels there a lot. He goes to Asia. He goes this place. This was in his own backyard, literally 25 minutes away.
The same town, right?
Almost 2 or 3 towns away.
Too close.
Yeah. So what was your getting started in this industry? So far, what was your most memorable case?
One of my most memorable case is it was like my second case that I've ever worked on my own. And it actually happened to be an insurance case.
Mm-hmm.
It was a young female, probably in her young 20s.
Personal injury, right?
Yeah,
What was wrong with
personal
her?
injury. She had a heart condition, and basically, she said she couldn't exercise, and it was preventing her from a lot of her daily activities.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, my job was just to basically follow her for the day and see what she was doing. So I had gym clothes in the car. I'm ready to go to the gym. Well, we did everything but go to the gym that day.
And she was in good shape. How did she stay in shape?
I don't know. Well, I think
thought for sure she'd go to the gym.
Well, I think I know how she stayed in shape after you hear this. So, so I'm at her house and I'm waiting for her to emerge, and I follow her. And she gets on the parkway, and she's from South Jersey, and she heads up to Central Jersey, and she pulls into an apartment complex. And I see her get out very quickly. She runs over to a car, and there's a little exchange, money exchange into something else. And so she wasn't buying something healthy, I'll tell you that. So then I followed her, and she went to a local Dunkin' Donuts that was in that area. So I followed her inside because I was wondering what she was doing. And she went in the bathroom. I heard some weird noises. It didn't sound normal. She was not going to the bathroom, but I think she was doing drugs. Matter of fact, she was doing drugs. The sounds, it just seemed that way. And I know she was doing drugs because when she left on her way up there, she was speeding. She was driving fast, weaving in and out of cars. And then all of a sudden I'm following her from Central Jersey, and she's headed North Jersey. And all of a sudden, whatever she did must have kicked in. So she's going 100 miles per hour, and then all of a sudden it was like, and then she went real slow. And there's two things very difficult on this job. Is one, following someone who drives really fast, or following someone that drives really slow. Yes. So usually I'm following like someone really slow, and they're like a lot older. So now I have this young female. I'm following her. She's going really slow. She heads all the way up to North Jersey to this unknown address. So she parks around the block, and she walked inside, and this older male shows up at the front door, and it looked like they've seen each other before. Mm-hmm. There was a large bay window, and I saw them actually walk through the house into like what was their living room, his living room. I saw them kiss, and I said, okay, she's not going to the gym. Yeah. So with a little investigation and utilizing social media, we were able to find out that his wife and children were on vacation. And it turns out that he was a professor at a local university. Mm-hmm. And so she was actually having an affair with this guy. And I believe whatever she bought from the guy, I think she was giving it to this guy too. So now they get in the car and they head up all the way up to New York State to this shopping center. And now he's buying her fancy purses. I mean, he's.
I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah, you don't want this business.
Clearly, I'm in the wrong business.
So he's buying her, fancy purses, and they're all lovey-dovey. And I'm going in and out of stores. I'm sitting on the bench outside watching them shop, and I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, God, I think she has a heart condition. She definitely isn't here to exercise. So then I followed them back down into Jersey. And they went to an apartment complex where they both snuck around the back of the apartment complex into like some sliding glass doors, whoever's unit it was, I wasn't sure. But about 45 minutes later, he came out and he's tucking his shirt back in and stuff. So, yeah, so I think there was, they were having an affair, definitely. Mm-hmm. It just amazed me because here I am starting a job, and I realized very early in the job that when someone's lying about one thing, they start lying about so many things in their life.
Right.
And I'll till this day, it's something I'll always remember. If someone is lying, they're lying about other things.
Right.
It just
Like
kind
you
of
lie
goes.
once, why are you to be believed with anything else?
Yeah, she wasn't doing what she was supposed to be doing or say she couldn't do, but she was doing more. Like, her heart problem was probably going to get worse from the drugs, and now she's having an affair and doing all this. It just wasn't the right things to do, but I'll always remember that now. And now on every case, I've noticed little things when they're lying about things, and then you'll start picking up little other things. So it's kind of like a life lesson that I learned through here.
Right. It's kind of cool. And you never know what you're going
Yeah.
to see. You think you're going to go out, investigate a personal injury case, and it turns out to be infidelity. Like, you just never know.
I mean, it was like a
what you're
2
gonna
for
say.
1
It was
there.
a 2 for special.
It was.
We should have charged double for that.
We should have.
So, as part of the podcast, every week we're going to be featuring an email from a listener. And we are going to let our audience know what their problem is, and we're going to figure out how to solve it. And that might be giving you tips that you could do at home, or some things that just you need an investigator for that we don't recommend that you do on your own. Now let's get into today's email. Hi, I'm having some troubles with my partner doing some uncharacteristic things after work in Manhattan with new people I know very little about. We've had some problems in the past 12 months and we're working to reconcile. However, there was a significant breakdown of openness and transparency due to some incidents during our off period. Now, I need some more details, but I could kind of guess and surmise what's going on here. The first thing is, anytime you have issues with trust, openness, transparency, a relationship's not going to work. So that's the first issue that's here. I think everyone can agree there needs to be openness and trust in
Absolutely.
a relationship. So it sounds like they took a little break, and ever since then, just maybe things happened. We were on a break and something happened, and maybe this listener really hasn't gotten over that yet and is just feeling extra anxious. And that's okay. We got lots of cases that have to do with that, where people have experienced infidelity with their partner in the past. They are trying to work through it. And there is this period of uneasiness where they think that old patterns are being picked up again. They'll call us and we go out and we'll let them know what's really going on. It's a process. I mean, just because there's been an infidelity doesn't necessarily mean you must get a divorce or you must break up. I've seen couples reconcile. It's very hard to do because trust is very hard to regain once it's been eroded. So this is a case we would definitely want to help somebody with, to help them move on with their life, whatever way that might be. So in this case, I think obviously the number one is, when you have openness and transparency in a relationship, you need communication. So I would be advising this client to ask questions.
Right.
I don't know if he or she did yet or not, but if this was someone who was calling in and I had an opportunity to speak with them, I'd say, first of all, why are you thinking that something is off? What are the uncharacteristic traits that you're seeing? And I would want to ask them, well, who are these people that you're hanging out with? And immediately, if that person's shutting down, that's a sign that, we got to keep probing here and find out exactly what's going on. But that's a red flag. So asking questions, there is nothing wrong with asking questions. You'd be surprised how many people do not feel comfortable asking probing questions. I don't know. I'm all about it. I guess that's why people call me nosy and I do what I do. And I'm tenacious that way. I'm like, I will ask the most inappropriate questions because I don't care. You have a right to answer. I have a right to ask. So people used to get so pissed at me, when I was in high school, and I'd be like, Sherry, did you have sex with him? And my other friend would say, Barry, that's so inappropriate to ask. I'm like, I want to know. She doesn't have to answer, but this could be a clue as to why he dumped her after the first date. I don't know what happened.
I bet she answered you, right?
She did. She wasn't offended. Tell the other girl to shut up. But anyway, I don't have a problem asking questions. So I would always advise people, start asking questions. And that also, you might get your answer right then and there. But if you still do have to investigate further, whether on your own or with a private investigator, I'm going to ask you those questions. Ask where they're going. Ask who they're going out with. So right then and there, you have a pattern, you have a routine, you kind of get the gist of what's going on. So definitely ask those questions. Have communication. When it comes to the investigation itself, now you've asked and they've answered. They said, "Oh, I'm going to the Soho Lounge, and I'm just meeting a couple guys there, and we're just gonna have dinner, some drinks, whatever." Great. Well, guess what? You, as the partner, can certainly show up to the Soho Lounge and find out if your partner's lying or not. You could show up, throw on a wig like we would, sit at the bar, sit in the corner, and stay focused on that door, and see if your partner walks in.
Right, or they can have a friend go over.
Watching, a friend,
Yeah.
an investigator, sitting at that door watching. And if he doesn't show up, you get to go home, you put on your jammies, you get into bed, and you wait for that door to open, and you say, "So, how was the Soho Lounge tonight?" And if they go, "Oh, it was great. I mean, the food was terrific. The music was fantastic. I'm sorry I'm so late. I just got carried away. The drinks were so good. We had the best time." They're lying. So right there, you have a baseline. That's why questions are important. See, you didn't even need us. You could do this on your own.
Yeah, a lot.
So that's one thing that I would suggest. And that's exactly how I'd handle it. I'd want to do some surveillance on this person and find out what's going on. But what else could you do to see, like, if somebody is how could you gather little clues to find out what exactly someone's doing after work when,
I mean,
they're not supposed to
There's
be.
a lot of clues. I mean, while he's sleeping, check his pockets. Pockets of his jeans, pockets of his jacket. Look for a receipt.
I'm glad I don't live with you.
Look at all the stuff, Hey, maybe his cell phone code while he's sleeping. Look at that. I mean, there's so many things that you can do just to, find red flags just on him without.
Right. And if there is like a breakdown of trust, you have every right to do so. You have every right to hire somebody to watch that person that you don't trust. You have every right. So snoop away.
Do it. I mean, why not? You're
do it.
You're his wife. Look through his stuff. So there's so much that you can expect this season. You're going to hear about our crazy stories, our memorable experiences, different disguises we've worn, some of the things and crazy things that we've seen, and just all these behind the scene things. So stay tuned, keep watching, and make sure you reach out to us.
Yes. So I guess that's a wrap for this first episode. And we really, really want to hear from you. So tell us your stories, crazy stories. Maybe there's something we can help you with. Who knows?
It could be anything.
You could be featured on our next episode.
Yes.
And you can email us your stories at
theprivateeyespodcast@gmail.com.